This video is sponsored by Kaamos Metal Cruise 2023.
Amassing the bodies and bits as I die. Sentient and filthy they rot. Flammable and stinging, discarded like waste. For the fire of the handgun. You played it all wrong. And soul and valor.
What's up guys and gals, it's Rauta and time for another recap video. This is about Beyond the Gates festival in Norway, early August 2023. As this was my very first time in Bergen and at the Beyond the Gates festival, it was a virgin trip that raised so many questions, so many ideas about how it's going to be and what kind of a feeling I'm getting out of the city and the festival and all that stuff. So for me this is as much as kind of going through the whole idea, what was happening and how things were, what kind of vibe they were really giving me about this interesting lineup, but also about the city, the people and all that stuff. Now, a lot of these things I have already gone through with my preview of the festival, so I try not to repeat what I already said with there, going through the lineup and all that stuff. But now that I have more information, more experience about the festival, I think I have some pointers to consider and to weigh in terms of whether you or not you should be going to Bergen and Beyond the Gates in the future. Now, since I don't have video material out of the city, I actually made their new mistake and for getting my memory card out of my small camera, I don't have any extra footage out of the festival and the city as such, which I could just, show you here while I'm talking to. So maybe this is gonna be a boring thing to view and maybe you just put it on the background while I guide you through. So, since I already went through the lineup and the basic information about Bergen, like how to get there, what to consider and blah blah blah, I'm just gonna recap my overall feeling about the fest, how it was organized, how the people were, how the surroundings were, what was the price range and stuff like that. Now first get to the basic, the festival. It runs for 4 days, or did it run at least this year, and all those days were wonderful. By the time, however, say day 3, I felt like I'd been there 5 days already because, when you have long days and long nights and you barely sleep some 6 hours, it kind of takes a toll on your body and all that stuff, mine as well. But those were some good hours we spent. Now out of 4 days, we basically, by we I mean me and my cameraman, we witnessed 3 days. Now you might ask why or how you lose 1 day. Well, it was a very special day and I'll get to that. But throughout those 3 days when we actually got to see bands and getting the vibe and the feeling and the whole thing, the experience out of the festival, I must say it was a very, very rewarding experience. One of the highlights for this year. And the reason is this: no matter where we went, people were nice, we were very welcome. I met a bunch of Rauta followers, it seems, who were always super nice, and I had some good conversation with people. But more importantly, I guess the interview we did, I'm really happy about them, and the bands I saw on stage, they were, delivering. Obviously with any kind of festival, there won't be a festival with 100% just right up my alley kind of a thing. So obviously, much like every other fan right there, I'm just gonna do a little bit cherry picking, figuring out which bands I want to see and which ones I don't. And this is all, of course, in a way, a blessing in disguise. I mean, whenever some band that you're particularly not interested, or I'm not interested, that time will be used for socializing, networking, and sometimes, if the gods of metal make it possible to do interviews. Of course, more often than not, some of the interviews happen during the times when you're supposed to see a band, and then you're just like, fuck it, you're gonna lose some, win some, but that's how it is. Can't really complain. Now, some of the highlights for me personally includes or include bands like Enslaved playing the L set. That was probably the best shit ever. I mean, I've seen Enslaved on 4 different decades: 1990s, early 2000, 2010, and now 2023. 2023, and every time I see Enslaved, it's all like taking me back, but also very much like rooting me to this day. And it's just a wonderful band I really enjoy. So no matter what kind of a gig I see with them, it's always gonna be great. And this was no exception. Going through the whole L set feel like kind of a nostalgic, but at the same time very very modern. So can't really complain about it. I loved it. And Grieghallen, the famous concert hall in Bergen, where a lot of metal bands have recorded their albums as well. Man, that place is really worth visiting. The sound, the place you were to see the band on the stage, lighting, everything is really good. And when you want to take a little bit a breather out of the concerts, you won't be bombarded by a lot of background noise. You just get to have your beers and take a piss, eat something, talk to your friends, totally in peace. The soundproof ways to how the building is constructed and all that, it's wonderful. So when you go in and you're like, wow, this sound is magnificent. Same thing with Airturnus opening the evening for the last day, or bands like Dimmu Borgir being a headliner for the last day. But like I said, when you go out, things are like you're in a different world after just like exiting a door. So it's really good. And there were like these tattoo shops. You could visit some famous names. They're doing tattoos and all that stuff. You had people, selling merchandise, t-shirts, CDs, whatever. Like there was Dark Essence Records, for example, Ed Circle Productions, and Terra Tour, and people like that. I mean, they're friendly. They, my friends, I would say, were nice to visit every now and then when you needed to take a break. So all I'm saying, Grieghallen alone with these bands are great. But what was interesting for me in learning was that Beyond the Gates was basically put into various, maybe I should show you here, various places. Like, for example, Friday and Saturday, this was the main stage, Grieghallen. Very core of the city, very walkable distance if you are living in the city central. And USF Werftet, which is old wharf, that is a boat building, ships or whatnot. This was the main stage for Wednesday and Thursday, having two different stages. It felt weird that for 2 days you go totally different venues than the 2 last days. But once you get used to it, you get the hang of it, it doesn't feel that odd. But at first it felt weird, especially when they're a little bit on the different side of city centrum. And then you have this Kulturhuset, culture house, in the city of in the central core of the city of Bergen, which was smaller venue, but nonetheless with a decent club stage and all, was very much fitting. And it was nice that when we were, example, located in the middle of the city, they all were a little bit different from our hotel, but very much walking distance. Bergen isn't that big of a city, which is a relief when you're going to there as a visitor, fan, whatever audience member. And then you have this stereo metal bar of sorts, which we didn't actually visit because there are other places like Helion, thanks to that, for I think like 3 evenings, Apollon, which is record shop, and metal bar, and of course the stereo. But I think we visited, and yeah, Kroken, that was which we also visited a couple of times for drinks. So you have at least 4 places, give or take, with metal people as DJs, playing metal music, meeting like-minded people, metal fans and all that stuff. So it's like jumping back and forth between different venues and places. But that's part of the charm because Bergen is a really nice city. Surrounded by the way, 7 different mountains which you can just visit. And I strongly recommend you doing that. Those places are beautiful. This is probably the most beautiful city in all the Nordic countries I've visited. Not that I've visited dozens and dozens, but I mean I've been into many different places in Sweden or Denmark or Norway and Finland, Iceland, and I've seen bigger and smaller cities, and Bergen in terms of geographic sense and all that stuff is the most beautiful one. With those 7 mountains and also the possibility to look over the Bay Area, over the city, to the sea, whatever, and just wonderful place, which I totally recommend visiting. Even more so if you get the chance to visit outskirts of the city, when you can just see the infamous or famous, depending how you want to take a look at it, Fantoft Stave Church, burned down by certain Mr. Vikernes back in the days and rebuilt after that. You also get to see these monastery ruins, which we visited. And also the surrounding smaller mountains and rural areas where like we did a little bit of hiking. Which leads me to a little bit of a thank you list for people helping out. Mr. Terrestrial Hospice guy, or Paimon, or what else? What other names he is having? Big thanks to him for taking us to the hiking trip outside Bergen and showing us around the places. We did some footage there with a little bit Martti videos, and also just a lot of photos taken around. My drone footage is yet to come after editing and all that stuff. And of course, Mr. Höst of Tolkien for taking us to trip to the monastery ruins where the famous Immortal music video was done some 30 plus years ago, for also the Fantoft Church and also the nearby, one of the nearby mountains we got to visit. And as such, that's why talk interview happened on 3 different locations, which made me kind of a proud. I mean, it was great to visit Bergen and outskirts of Bergen by someone who actually knows the city, lives in the city, and knows the surroundings and various places, like we saw those witch trial monuments and all that stuff. So all in all, great stuff. And also a little bit thank you to the Terror Processions Ule and Okoi from Belzer helping us figure out how to do and where to do and meet the guy of Blood Incantation. Now for the interviews we done. There were 6 interviews we tried to do because it seems like the original plan to go 2 per day, that is 8 in total, seemed like an impossible task. So many bands didn't reply, the labels didn't reply, so kind of disappointed with that. But sometimes good things happen to good people. Now I'm here saying basically we are good people because things happen to us. But I'm really, really proud to announce that we got to do Possessed interview with Jeff. And what a legend, what a great guy, and great gig, by the way, with Possessed as well. So I'm really happy about it. Unfortunately, we couldn't do one with, for example, Dimmu Borgir and D-Side, which were, of course, one of the main bands on the stage. And I mean, I love D-Side. Seeing it for the first time, it was fantastic. Too bad we couldn't land with the interview because I didn't reach neither the band, neither the label, or actually I got into contact the label only to get information that they are not signed to the label anymore, nor the booking agency never bothered to answer. So if I have some disappointments to announce, yeah, labels and bookers and whatever, sometimes they do just bad stuff. Whereas, for example, tour manager of Possessed, Thomas, did help and made Possessed an interview to happen. So there are good people who make things happen, and then there are people who don't make anything happen. So there's that. Now, apart from Possessed, we got to do quite a few interviews, which I'm all happy about. Alan from Primordial, he was like one of those guys who were like, hey, it's 2 a.m. in the morning, we can do the interview right now, our pints and all that stuff. So big thanks and shout out to his direction as well. Also the guys from Negative Plane, we got to do with one of the guys from Negative Plane the next morning. We got to do Terrestrial Hospice, once again, thanks to him for showing the surroundings. We got to do Talke. Thank you, Hus, so much for your hospitality and showing things around. We did one within Twilight's Embrace and Eternus at Grieghallen, so you get a little bit that vibe as well. Thanks to those guys, great talks in my opinion. And now I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, Blood Incantation. Thank you, Paul, in case you're watching this one. Thanks for the gig and especially for the really, really philosophical and scientific talk in the interview. It's going to be a long one, hard to digest for a lot of people. I think it's one of the best, most intellectual one I've done for a long time, if ever maybe. So all in all, I think I am really, really satisfied with overall Bergen. Now, the downsides of Bergen and Beyond the Gates as such is, well, Norway is kind of a pricey. So whether it's about food, whether it's about, having beers and all that stuff, prepare to be spending, because Norway is not a cheap country. And even though us Finns are kind of used to rather pricey things, well, Norway can still rub your pockets and leave them empty because, well, beer, food, everything just cost. Now, when it comes to the hotel, for example, we had this hotel, Scandic, in the middle of the center of the city, and that wasn't too pricey. I mean, pretty normal price. But everything from depending on that, everything else was just like, okay, I'm just like burning money, like, god damn it. And so 5 days in Norway, 4 days in Bergen, 1 day in Oslo was just wow. spending money. And my biggest thanks, of course, go to Carl of Necrolas Productions, being my cameraman, a loyal friend who never complains but always goes with me and does these interviews with me, and of course taking me and our mutual friend Arash from Bergen to Oslo, 8 hours trip through magnificent places, sightseeing, fjords, mountains, waterfall, things like that. It's crazy beautiful between Oslo and Bergen. So if you have the possibility to go between those two cities by a car, do it. If you don't, but you get to ride a train, I guess it's still worth doing that, even though of course you're gonna just stop and step away from the car and take photos. Like I had my drone to take footage, video and photos from the surroundings. So all in all, taking consideration some good gigs, good interviews, the overall vibe from the city, the people I met, shook hands with, shared beers with, went to just take food and had interesting talks. I'm rating this trip for me personally 5 out of 5. Big thanks to people who helped me all the way to guide through the city, get the interviews done, and made this happen. So of course, big thanks to the Beyond the Gates crew also for getting us accredited and giving us basic information about what to do and all that stuff. Now, of course, I wish I had a little bit more information about the city before I had this and all that stuff, but can't really complain. These are minor details. For example, we got this. I don't have it here, probably. No, actually, I have. I am also going to show you what I got from one of the PR agencies. Thank you, Letitia, if you're watching this. We got these guest of honor badges, which let us in to an amount of stuff. I mean, you have quite a big of list of places you can visit there as a press or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's going to pre-press, of course, but what I'm saying here is that these are wonderful sightseeing places, museums and what have you. You get to visit when you're in Bergen and having a little bit time off from the gigs and all that stuff. So it's a great city, and I hope people will definitely go there, be it for the festival or be it just Bergen in general. Of course, when you get to do both, maybe have an extra day or two on top of things, the festival days, that's gonna be blast. As long as you got the money, it's definitely worth visiting. So the obvious question is, would I go Bergen another time? Yes, definitely so. Because the festival was really, really enjoyable and the city was great and the people were great. So what do I have to bitch about? Money. If that's the only problem, well, I'm pretty lucky bastard. So overall, big thumbs up for Beyond the Gates and Bergen in general. Whatever nasty shit you hear about Bergen people and prices or just, I don't know, bad kind of a vibe considered to go or versus Oslo and whatever, take it with a little bit of grain of salt. Some of it that might be true. Bergen people might be a little bit more arrogant, I guess, than Oslo-based people. But once you get beyond the first layer of things, at least I can't bitch about anything. Or maybe I just was happy to meet people who are not that arrogant Bergen type. I do not know. But I do know I love Beyond the Gates. And definitely, should things be possible, definitely going there for another run. So this is my take of Beyond the Gates. Some really good shows. Great vibe. Great place to be. Yeah, thumbs up. Rauta says thank you, and stay tuned for those interviews. They're supposed to come starting September and the next 8 weeks after that, assuming our schedule is not somehow damaged. These next 8 weeks starting from the very first week of September, and you should have interviews coming out from Beyond the Gates. Should you have any questions about Bergen or Beyond the Gates, let me know and I'll get back to you in the comment section. And should the next year come at some point, let's preview Beyond the Gates 2024. Until then, take care and see you soon with festivals coming your way. Bye-bye.